The first time I stood at the end of Castle Morne, with the giant lion slain and a Game of Thrones sword in my hand, I felt a great sense of wonder. This castle was something incredible, and yet, if you had asked me to explain what made it all so special, I couldn't have told you. Even now, it's hard to describe why I love this dungeon so much. It isn't the biggest, or the most intricate, or the most original. Instead, it has a little bit of everything, all woven together in a tightly packaged space. It's a dungeon that you stumble across at just the right time, drawing you into its world with its questline and environmental storytelling. Its secrets are carefully hidden, yet somehow effortless to find, and it gives you tons of unique options to tackle all of its challenges. I knew it was special, but I didn't fully understand why, so I decided to dissect it, pulling apart every last rat and leaving no smithing stone unturned. So in this video, I'm going to break down the 5 reasons why Castle Morne is such a great dungeon. Naturally, this will involve spoiling the entire dungeon, but you probably already guessed that from the title. To start, let's take a look at the dungeon in the greater context of Limgrave. Castle Morne is located on the southern tip of the Weeping Peninsula, an isolated section to the south of Limgrave. It's a beginner-level dungeon, and its main purpose is to provide players who are avoiding Margit or Godric with a safe place to get stronger and gain experience with the combat mechanics. The game wants you to find it early, which may seem surprising because it isn't anywhere near the starting location. But Limgrave's difficulty spikes are designed to push players towards it. The starting area in the west of Limgrave is actually not a very friendly place for beginners. Sure, there are a couple of easy dungeons, but these run dry pretty quickly, and there are some very dangerous enemies, like the Tree Sentinel and Flying Dragon Agil. Up north you have Margit, the notoriously difficult first boss, and a couple more dangerous fights, like the Ball-Bearing Hunter and the Crucible Knight. This leads to a lot of players fleeing the western side and seeking adventure to the east. The main path takes them across this small bridge, and from there, it's just a small walk south to this Site of Grace. This may not seem like that big of a deal, it's just some random Site of Grace, right? But this is the first place where you can see that all-important yellow arrow, pointing you to your next major objective. Players who are looking for something to do before they tackle Margit or Godric will be able to hop on this signal, and ride it all the way to the castle. Castle Morne is something you stumble across just when you need it most. When you're feeling frustrated, like maybe you should be fighting Bowser instead of Margit, Castle Morne swoops in and gives you the confidence boost you need. Next, let's talk about the storyline and lore. When you first cross the bridge into the Weeping Peninsula, you meet Irina, who asks you to deliver a letter to her father in Castle Morne. The servants have staged a rebellion, and will almost certainly take over the castle. Irina managed to escape, but her father insists on staying put, more concerned with his honor than his life. She's written him a letter begging him to change his mind, and needs you to deliver it. It's not the most intricate tale, but it's easy to understand, and gives you a tangible goal. What makes it special is the level of detail baked into the enemies and environment, and how that environmental storytelling changes the gameplay. The Misbegotten, who have recently claimed much of the castle, seem more concerned with celebrating their victory than watching for adventurers. You find them hacking at corpses and hoisting their cleavers, which makes picking them off quite easy. In other sections, the battle still rages, as Misbegotten fight Godric's soldiers. You can use this to your advantage by attacking the side that's stronger, so the two cancel each other out. Doesn't buy you any goodwill though. Dude, don't you get that I'm on your side? Stop stabbing me. The lore is more than just an old story that could have been tossed anywhere. It's happening right in front of you, and impacts the way the dungeon plays, making it a really memorable location. Next, the area presents complex challenges with a variety of solutions. Enemies lying in wait can be picked off from their hiding spots. The fight between the Misbegotten and the soldiers can be used to your advantage, and many enemies can be easily ignored. But my favorite example of this has to be the opening courtyard, a large arena that allows for a huge number of playstyles. The courtyard is made up of 4 main sections. There are the Misbegotten to the right, a group of zombie dogs to the left, a small alcove in the back with more zombie dogs, and a corridor up top, with a pumpkin head and one last Misbegotten. The Misbegotten are the biggest threat, as this group can easily overwhelm the player. But luckily for us, they're far more interested in celebrating their victory than watching for invaders. If you have some sort of ranged option, you can lure them out one by one, or simply try to kill them from a distance. If you want to avoid them altogether, you can move along the left, first clearing the alcove and then taking out the zombie dogs along the wall. If you want to try to go in head first, the area lets you use spirits to draw some of the attention, and this makes a full-on brawl somewhat easier. If you want to avoid a fight, you can just try to run past everyone. There's a ladder in the top right that will keep you safe if you get high enough, but get on too late and you'll take a lot of hits. And last but certainly not least, you can lure the Pumpkinhead into the center of the courtyard and have him blindly fight all of the enemies for you. The varying levels of hostility, enemy variety, and room structure make this area an absolute blast. The enemies can be tough for a low-level character, but there are so many different options that anyone can get through it with a little creative thinking. Next, let's talk about hidden pathways. The main path to the final boss is not very direct. You have to drop down to this site of grace, jump to this building, go down this trapdoor, jump on this roof, and fall down this shaft. It's fun to discover all these little secrets, but the path is convoluted and unintuitive. How do you build such a massive maze without players getting lost? Well, the developers made sure to add a ton of different hints, to make sure you don't lose the trail. Most people won't notice every single one, but there are enough different options that you can miss one or two and still stay on the scent. Irina's quest makes it clear that you have something to do in the castle. Depending on how far along you are, you know you either need to find her father or get the legendary sword. This doesn't make finding the path any easier, but it lets you know that you still have a reason to be there. One of the most frustrating feelings in gaming is not knowing whether you missed something or there's simply nothing left to find. Without Irina's quest, a player may think that the Claymore and Steel Wire Torch are the only rewards. Most dungeons have a boss, but not all of them, and if you aren't finding that next step, you may start to wonder if you're wasting your time. The quest lets you know that there's definitely more to do. We also have the Guidance of Grace, the little yellow arrows that point you to your next objective. This site of grace at the start of the dungeon points directly to the one behind the castle, and this gives players a general idea of where to look. Once you get behind the castle, your main hint is what you can see. Looking over the edge, we can see the island where we fight Leonine, and the yellow fog door that denotes a boss fight. This encourages you to move down towards the tip of the peninsula. The game also locks you into certain areas until you find the path. Once you activate the site of grace behind the castle, there's no way to go back. This area with the bridge is similar. Once you explore the section, there's simply nowhere to go until you find the jump onto the roof. Castle Morne uses a large number of varied hints to make sure that players don't get confused while exploring. By making sure there's always more than one thing pushing you forward, it allows for players to miss something and not get stuck. On my first playthrough, I never noticed the Guidance of Grace pointed me to this location, but the quest kept me motivated to explore until I eventually found it. Each one of these discoveries is a magical little moment where you feel like you're breaking the game, but of course, you're simply doing what the designers planned all along. Last on our list is the big bad lion thing himself, Leonine. This boss is fantastic because he's designed to be two different things to two different groups of players. Most importantly, he's a somewhat easy fight for newcomers to the series. Not a pushover, but a major boss that's significantly easier than Margit, and will be a manageable challenge for people just getting into FromSoft games. At the same time though, he's also a satisfying fight for players who intentionally up the challenge. A medium difficulty boss that you won't simply forget. This is accomplished by making Leonine extremely weak to spirits and specialty weapons, while making him a reasonably tough foe if you don't use these options. Since many veteran players choose to play without spirits, this is a great option for moderating difficulty. Leonine's biggest strength is that he's extremely aggressive and doesn't give you much breathing room. Finding time to heal can be really hard, because even if you get some distance from him, he can come bounding back in a few strides. This is made significantly easier by simply having a spirit in the fight with you. It doesn't really matter which one, just getting some space to drink a crimson flask is a huge help. On top of this, Leonine also has a massive weakness. He's extremely easy to stagger, and many early game spirits can do so consistently. The wolves are great because there are 3 of them, and they can get in a ton of hits that lead to staggers. But my personal favorite has to be the jellyfish. This little guy does enough damage to stagger with every hit, and his poison attack is famous for slowly tearing down bosses. Of course, it's not like I invented using this spirit. The jellyfish outside are there to put the idea in your head. There's one more tool that the game throws your way to deal with this fight, the whip. The whip is found right by the last site of grace before the boss, and is quite useful. Every single hit will stagger Leonine, and you can stunlock him for quite some time while dealing massive damage. This is perfect for new players who just want a simple way to get through the dungeon. Some people will still be figuring out the basic mechanics, and it feels good to get a win under your belt. Most players won't figure this out by themselves, but for people who get frustrated and look to the internet, this will be a welcome helping hand. Now, let's talk about the other end of the spectrum. Many Souls veterans won't want to use spirits or specialty weapons, and they'll have to contend with unceasing aggression. Leonine will lunge at you from a distance, pummel your shield with his combos, and slam his sword from above. You'll have to learn your roll timings, because blocking his swipes is guaranteed to drain your stamina. This is still an early game boss, so many of his attacks leave room for punishes, but you will die to moves you just weren't prepared for, and your victory will be well earned. However you want to take it, this is a boss that everyone can enjoy. It's a perfect example of Elden Ring's intrinsic difficulty scale, letting you choose your challenge without relying on menus and settings. Castle Morne shows us that a large number of different ideas can all come together to support each other, each one blending perfectly into the next to a degree that makes separating them difficult. It took me a while to break the castle into its components, because you're not actually supposed to see it that way. Just like the ingredients of a cake, each system blends into a cohesive whole that's delicious all the way through. Thanks for watching.